Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock on April 2nd, 2022, and I officially open this meeting of the Conway City Council and welcome all of you here. Madam Clerk, have we satisfied the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And with all council members present and accounted for, we do have a quorum. So we will move forward at this time. Reverend Andrew Cook with First United Pentecostal Church is here to lead us in our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance. Would you come forward, please?
Let's bow our heads in prayer. Lord Jesus, we give you praise today. We're thankful, first of all, for who you are, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the God of mercy and compassion and grace. And Lord, this day you have made, we do rejoice and we are glad in it. Lord Jesus, you've instructed us that first of all in our prayers and in giving of thanks, that we should do so for those that are in authority, that we may live a quiet and peaceable life with all godliness and sincerity. And for that, Lord, we are thankful for the city of Conway. We're thankful, Lord, for our mayor and the city council members that are here. Lord, we know that they have decisions that must be made, and some of them may be very difficult. But God, with you, you have wisdom, you have knowledge. You can give us the direction that we need today. And so we thank you, Lord, for their service. And we ask you, Lord, that you will bless them and that you will bless our community. And for that, again, we give you praise for it all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you so much for that invocation. We will move now to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion? Mr. Hyman.
Mayor, I would make a motion that we amend the agenda. It's my understanding there was a request from the applicants in number 7, Part C and Part D. There was a request to pull that public hearing, the first reading request. So I would make a motion that we amend the agenda to show that has been pulled.
And would you further move that we approve with that change?
I will.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Mr. Goldfinch.
I'll second Mr. Hyman's motion, please.
We have a properly seconded motion with the change indicated, that is the removal of items 7C and D, approve the agenda as it is set forth. All in favor with show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. And now relative to the consent agenda, is there a motion? I'll move then. Mr. White, go ahead.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. And I'll second Mr. White's motion. All in favor, please indicate with the show of your right hand. Thank you. And that motion always also carries unanimously. Moving to item 6, item 5, public input. This is an opportunity for anybody to approach the council with information that we may need to know, with credits, complaints, questions, whatever the case may be. The only restricted dialogue would be that has to do with an individual employee that would need to be taken up in a private venue. Anybody can come forward. You will have 5 minutes to speak. There's a monitor that will help you keep up with your timing so that you can say what's most important to be heard. Public input is not interactive. It's not like you ask us questions and we sort of go back and forth, but it's not uncommon if your question is very, very easy to answer, that somebody on staff or maybe one of us will just give you the answer or hand you a business card. I have a name of one person who has signed up in advance to speak at during public input. CJ Crampton from Belladora Road. Yes, sir. I'm going to ask you to come forward first, please. Just a couple of things. If you will, Mr. Crampton, speak directly into the mic. People in the back have trouble hearing you.
Hi, well, this is my first time speaking at a city council meeting, but I have a lot of things on my mind. One is Smith Jones Pool that's been down for 3 years. Every time I call somebody about that pool, it gets bounced around to other people. Right now, last I heard, it's up to DX. That pool's been one of the things in that community for the kids and stuff. I mean, somebody damaged it, drained it the wrong way. But it does not make sense that this city of Conway cannot step up and fix that pool for the kids in this community. That's the only thing they have. They have nothing else. Second thing I have is city of Conway. I would love to know why they treat poor areas like poor areas. Like when you leave city, if you leave Rose Haven and go on 378 on the right, look at the sidewalks that are not being maintained by the city. I called last year and talked to one of the employees of the city of Conway in charge of landscaping. And what he did, he went up there with a grass killer and just sprayed it. It only takes 5 minutes to go there with a weed whacker. It's like this. We all pay our taxes. We all do things. Just because we live in a poor community doesn't mean we should be treated like poor people. And it really irks me a lot. You know, you got your different areas in Conway. You know, you got downtown Conway's a lot better place. But why does the city of Conway treat the poor people like poor? You know, you can tell a poor place in Conway or anywhere. Look for all the liquor stores in the area and look for all the title loan companies. That's how you can tell it's a poor area. And that's wrong. We're all here together, one group. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or just a person. It's not fair to the city of Conway. It's not fair to the people. It's not fair that the poor area of city of Conway looks like crap. Excuse my language, but that's just the way I feel. I mean, I just can't deal with it no more. And I won't be coming back to these meetings until something gets done, because it doesn't make sense that that pool can't be fixed. They keep bouncing, like I said, city of Conway bounced it, Smith Jones bounced it all. Now they got it on DHEX. Who's in charge of it? It's been down for 3 years. I mean, do you care about the kids in this community? Think about it. You're talking about kids that have nothing at all to do. This will keep them out of trouble, keep them from crime, getting into stuff, doing things they shouldn't be doing. Give them something. And if you have to raise the money for them to go in, so be it. Then raise it. When I first came here, it was $1. Then it went up to $2. But it costs $3. Look at this way. You're helping the youth in this community. Isn't that what it's about? Or would you rather see the youth on the corner slinging drugs and getting locked up for doing stupid things in life? It's not right. And it's not right that city of Conway, the poor areas, get treated poorly. If you get time, Ms. Mayor, drive through the city of Conway on 378 and look around the sidewalks and look at some of the businesses like loan companies, that they're not maintaining their property either. And that's wrong. The city of Conway has the power to tell these businesses to get out there, cut your grass, keep your area clean. Because you got to remember, when tourists come through here, what they see reflects on us. And you all talk about that you want tourists to come down here. How can you have that when you got the city of Conway looks like a trash compactor, trash area? That's basically what I got to say. I hope you all take what I have in consideration. I'm not trying to bully anybody to be mean. It's just point blank. City of Conway needs to step up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crampton. Is there anyone else who would like to approach the council at this time? Anyone? Anyone? There being no one, I'll move that we close public input at this time. Mr. Goldman.
I'll second your motion.
We have a probably seconded motion to close public input at this time. All in favor, please indicate so with a show of your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Item 6, a special presentation. First presentation of longevity awards by Mr. Adam Emery.
Good evening. In 2001, City Council created a program to recognize our employees on milestones that they've served with the City of Conway in increments of 5 years. And tonight we're really excited to be able to recognize 15 years of service by Dexter King. Dexter, can you come up? Dexter was hired in April of 2007 as a trades worker 1 in our solid waste department, was reclassified to a sanitation worker in 2019, and he served 15 years with a smile on his face for our City of Conway. Thank you, Dexter. Thank you.
Mr. King, thank you for all your service. Item B is a proclamation announcing Building Safety Month. I'll join whoever is here from staff who would like to, who will receive this proclamation. Thank you so much. I think this is, please do. And I'd rather be between the two of you. I feel safer this way. This proclamation comes from the Office of the Mayor, Conway, South Carolina, Building Safety Month. Whereas City of Conway is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and essential role of our homes, buildings, and infrastructure play, both in everyday life and when disasters strike. And whereas our confidence in the resilience of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from hazards such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of public safety. Our local code officials will assure us of safe, sustainable, and affordable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. And whereas safety for all, building codes in action. The theme for Building Safety Month 2022 encourages all to raise awareness about planning for safe and sustainable construction, career opportunities in building safety, understanding disaster mitigation, energy conservation, and creating a safe and abundant water supply to all of our benefit. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety, resilience, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to us all by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Father Joe Linville, Mayor of the City of Conway, South Carolina, hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Building Safety Month in the City of Conway, South Carolina, and encouraging Conway residents to join us as we participate in Building Safety Month. In witness whereof, I set my hand across the seal of the City of Conway, South Carolina, to be its 2nd day of May 2022, is signed by yours truly and attested to by the City Clerk. On this, do a one-liner. All the requirements that people have difficulties with have a purpose behind them, and that is what these gentlemen stand for, and it is for our safety protection. And I congratulate you and thank you for your hard work. And as the department head, I will let you know that. I'll hug you. Thank you so much, Mr. Embark. Item 7, public hearing and first reading of ordinance 2022-05-16A, establishing a Keep America Beautiful committee and a Keep Conway Beautiful fund. Mr. Timmy Williams.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm presenting this tonight because we have 2 other committees that's in my department that I'm responsible for, which is Rose Hill Cemetery, Lakeside Cemetery. Keep Conway Beautiful is another committee that I'm responsible for in my department. This committee is a sponsored city organization. It's made of 7 members appointed by City Council. So we just want to be in compliance with the city ordinance. So we want to bring this for you tonight to get approval.
Thank you so much. So this is our opportunity to approve the establishment of the fund and the committee itself.
That's
as I
correct.
understand it. Mr. Goldfinch.
Mayor, I move that we approve first reading.
Before you do that, this is a public hearing, yes.
Public hearing. This is first a public hearing and another opportunity for people from the public to speak either in favor of or against there being a Keep Conway Beautiful, an offshoot from Keep America Beautiful, and that there be a fund established to make certain that they are able to carry out their charge. Is there anyone who would like to say anything on this matter? Yes, ma'am. Would you come forward, please? We heard that. If you would first give us, if you'd give us your name and address and remember to speak directly into the mic. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Carmela Crampton, 2012 Bellador Road, Conway, South Carolina. And my issue is the pool again. To keep Conway beautiful, what about that pool? We have projects all around us and those kids need something to do. And you can't say it's money because the rec center has put like 1,000 palm trees and elliptical things outside. So if they can afford to do all that silliness, in my opinion, they need to fix that pool.
Thank you, ma'am.
And it's Keep Conway Beautiful, I hope, is part of getting that pool fixed for the children in Conway.
Thank you so much.
Done.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, I know we couldn't respond during public input, but we can now. Can staff take 30 seconds and explain to these folks?
Sure.
What the deal is with the pool?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're using community development block grant funds, which are federal funds, which require us to jump through 1 million hoops to be able to spend. We have about $300,000 in CDBG funds allocated toward the pool and creating a splash pad there. The problem is because it's federal funds, those hoops have delayed and delayed and delayed. Now, I have good news that I was going to report in my administrative report this afternoon. About an hour ago, we got notice from DHEC that we have our notice to proceed. Okay, so we hope within the next 2 weeks to get our construction bids out and be able to get the contractor selected to be able to do the work. I would not bank on it being ready this year, but at least we'll have it moving. And when it comes back, it will be better than it was before because it will include additional amenities that were not there before.
Thank you both. Yes, sir. Does it have to do with Keep Conway? No, I'm sorry,
That's
sir.
the city of Conway.
Okay.
Are
No,
you
sir.
allowed in the city of Conway?
Sir, I promise. I can't let you speak now on any subject other than Keep Conway Beautiful.
Okay.
The public
That's fine.
input is over. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mr. Goldfinch. Mr. Hyman, we have a properly seconded motion to close the public hearing portion of this issue. All in favor, please indicate so by showing your right hand. And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. Item B, public hearing and first reading. No, I'm sorry. I'm going too fast. And now we'll entertain a motion relative to those two things, the establishment of a committee and a fund for Keep Conway Beautiful. Is there a motion? Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the request.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Mr. Jordan?
I will second Mr. Allen's.
We have a properly seconded motion to approve both pieces, that the funding for and the establishment of the committee. Mr. White?
Question, about the funding. Where would the funding come from and how much would it be?
There is a little bit of seed money that is given by council to the fund, but most of it comes from grant money through Keep America Beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
We have money in place right now that was received from a grant that needs to go into the fund.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else? I'll call a vote. All in favor, please show your right hand. And motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Item B, public hearing and first reading of ordinance ZA 2022-05-16B to rezone approximately 2 2/2200 acres of property located at 1601 3rd Avenue, PIN 36803030017, 36806020001, and 36804040053 from high density residential district to City of Conway Highway Commercial. Ms. Harden.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance to rezone 3 pieces of property located off 3rd Avenue, also near the intersection of 3rd Avenue and Smith, To go over the information for anyone who was not here at the last meeting, the property is owned outright by the property owners of Oak Rentals LLC, which is also the Brown family. Brown family owns Conway Air Conditioning and Metal Company. That property and that business is looking to expand because they have reached the limits of their operational opportunities on their current property. There was a home, a vacant building on Third Avenue at this site that they were possibly looking to relocate offices to. And when they went to evaluate the property for sustainability and for habitability, they found that it was in very bad shape. So much so they had to take it down. So they are looking to expand across the street on the property that they own. In doing so, they discovered that it wasn't zoned for the use that they have across at the corner of Smith and Third, and are asking for that to be rezoned. There are 3 properties involved, 2 small ones and a large one that also goes behind into a wetland area. They're currently zoned R3, which is high density residential. And the proposal is to go to highway commercial. The current zoning is shown on the left. As you can tell, the areas that are around the Coal Ash Pond and on Ash Pond Road are considered in the high density area. Those high density residential zones typically buffer commercial cores and provide for opportunities for apartments or condos for employees that can walk or bike to work at a commercial core area. However, this one being up against a wetland area and also being straight across the street from an existing business, there are opportunities in the comp plan to support such a change. And the comp plan does encourage a variety of housing options, which the current zoning would provide, but it also promotes a variety of commercial industrial uses and development in appropriate locations that are compatible with the surrounding land use, provides employment opportunities, and serves the needs of local residents. In the arrows that you see here, you can see other buildings and other access or business opportunities in this area that are currently operating that would be akin to the expansion. The Planning Commission discussed this recommendation and unanimously recommended approval of the rezoning at their April 7th meeting. After that time, we sent out public notice, 15 letters were sent, a sign was posted, and a legal ad ran, and I don't have any communication from the public on this.
Thank you so much, Ms. Harden. This is a public hearing and an opportunity for anybody who wishes to speak to the council about your desires relative to this change in an ordinance. If there's anyone here present, I don't have a listing of anybody. If anybody here would like to either speak in favor of or against this change, please come forward now. Mr. Butler?
Mayor, I move that we close public hearing.
Thank you. Is there a second? Ms. Butler? We have a properly seconded motion to close the public hearing on this issue. This is also first reading. What is the will of the council? Mr. White?
I have a couple of questions first.
Sure.
Scott.
Absolutely.
Firstly, if this area is rezoned, what would happen, or how would it affect the residents that live around that area?
We discussed the access points that might be available from Second Avenue to Third Avenue at the Planning Commission meeting. And we have discussed the zoning opportunities available on Second Avenue with the applicant representative. The applicants indicated, number one, they were not intending on making any connection to the business to Second Avenue. Currently, there's a ditch in between the two that prevents a direct connection at this time. And in the future, it would be a very expensive connection to make because that is a key ditch to our stormwater system. Right now, there's no thought to connect Second Avenue and the residential sections to the building and the unit that might be built across the street. The other thing that they got is that this little piece of property here that is on Second Street, you can just barely see it, but the dot's in the middle, that is one of the 3 they've asked to be rezoned, but they have no future plans for that. It is the property that is cited here at this tree at the end of Second Avenue. And the focus is going to be on the larger parcel, which is directly across from the offices, and that smaller parcel to the left, which is where the house used to be. That's going to be the focus of their implementation for future expansion. In addition, there's a creek that goes behind that splits the larger tract. That'll make it very difficult to expand past that into the wetlands. So there's a natural buffer there that would provide kind of like a little buildable area without further expensive mitigation to the property.
And sec-
Sure, go right ahead.
and just beyond on the curve, there's another house that belongs to the Small family. How would that affect that property? Or do they still
At
own
this
it?
point, the only thing that will affect them is that when there is a office constructed on the larger property, they'll hear some noise, they'll see some traffic. Other than that, it shouldn't affect their access point. There should be, all the traffic should be going and coming from the same road that it comes from now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Ms. Butler. I'll save mine for last.
Have a quick question. On part of that larger track, there's flooding in that area, correct?
Yes.
Do we know the effects if, once they build on that place, will that affect that water flow? Do we know anything about that? Or if that will spread flooding to another area?
We'll know more when they have a site plan developed because they'll have to follow our stormwater guidance. And our stormwater regulations require that they keep the same amount of property on the water now. If I'm mistaken, let me know. That's correct? Okay, cool. And, oh, hi, you're here. I'm sorry. Applicant's here. But, we would as the government, the people looking at the plats, we would make sure that the water that is available to be held on that property would be the same before and after construction. In addition, since it's mostly vacant, that's going to be a bigger haul than a property that would have been reused from impervious surfaces. If you were to take down a building on a pervious surface, because it would have already leaked water out into a system. So and they've got an opportunity to tie into the system in the back if it's done well and if the staff approves it.
I have a single concern, and that's for the customers of the business. Right now, there's some pretty swift traffic coming off of 501 and around the curve. It's always been a little bit difficult to navigate. And when Mr. Smalls was alive, he talked often about how he couldn't pull out of his yard because of that traffic. Will there be an allowance for a person's backing into the road, or will they have to have a route such that they can enter that road front first?
All parking will have to be maintained on the site, and there will be a driveway access to the parking. The parking will not be able to back out directly onto 3rd Avenue. And we have a buffer requirement for all parking areas. So there'll need to be a little landscaping in there as well.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Goldberg.
Mayor, I move we approve first reading of 7.
Thank you. Mr. White, was that a hand?
Yes, second.
I wasn't forcing that on you now. But you know what, just because you weren't planning to do that, Ms. Helms was, do you mind if Ms. Helms? Thank you. So we have a properly seconded motion to approve first reading of this ordinance. Unless there are more questions or further discussion, there seems to be none. I'll call a vote. All in favor, please indicate so by showing your right hand. And that passes unanimously. Thank you so much, ma'am. Item 8, first reading of ordinance 2022-05-16E, granting a non-exclusive franchise agreement to Catherine Setz, DBA Dragonfly Paddleboard Adventures for paddleboard excursions and instruction services that will embark and disembark from docks located at the Waccamaw Riverfront District. This sounds exciting.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Hartman.
As a reminder to those that follow along, this is a second franchise agreement heard by the council for the Waccamaw Riverfront District. The last one was for boat excursions and education and was approved. So we followed a similar path with this. As a reminder for franchise agreements, that's an extension of a privilege to use the streets, parking, and other city areas that they don't currently have the legal right to do so for a business operation. It allows the franchisee to use the city property in the requested manner, which exceeds or differs from customary uses, which would be the business folks embarking and disembarking on the public docks in the WRD district. The franchise agreement does not give the applicant the exclusive right, so they cannot block off the docks. They have to share them with everyone else. And then the franchise agreement assigns liability for the customer to the business, which is tantamount to making sure that the city is protected. As part of a franchise agreement, there is a legal requirement in state law that 3 ads run on 3 different days prior to 7 days before the meeting, which is a long way and a confusing way of saying they have to do so many ads before you get here. And the applicant has met that and provided that proof to us through the affidavits of the publication agency. And to give you a little background on the application and the applicant is here. Dragonfly Paddleboard Adventures partners with Waccamaw Outfitters as a single operation company to provide training and excursions to folks on stand-up paddleboards or SUPs. And interestingly, we found out they got yoga as well, which is, oh,
Awesome.
she's here. Yes,
And she's
she's here.
here. Wonderful.
If you'd like to ask any questions of the applicant or myself.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Goffin.
Mayor, I was gonna move that we approve first reading and also add that, and I'm gonna quote Matt Vornador, she has my full support. She's been working with me for years. Good people, end quote. So with that, yeah, I made the motion.
Awesome. Is there a second? Ms. Helms?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a properly seconded motion to approve first reading of this ordinance. Are there any questions or comments that need to be made before we call a vote? There being none.
I'm sorry.
Mr. White, you're slow.
If one was to try to do this paddle boarding, would he or she have to know how to swim first?
Yes, Larry.
I just want to make certain.
Well, it would. You don't
And
want
would there be safety, gear that he or she would have on as well?
Yes, my name is Catherine Setz
Okay.
and with Dragonfly Paddleboard Adventures. All of the safety requirements, I belong to the United States Canoe Association, and I am required by being a business member through them that we follow all of the safety requirements of that organization. They're known for their teaching and training of boating, canoeing, all kinds of water sports safety. So I follow specifically those guidelines. Anyone under the age of 12 or under the age of 14 is required to wear a life jacket at all times. Anyone that is beyond that age can choose whether they wear it or not, as long as it's on board, following the same guidelines as boating.
Anyone else have questions or comments while we have our owner present?
You're not getting me on what?
So we have a new goal, and that is to get Councilman White on one of those paddle boards. We'll be working on it.
I will
Standing
gladly accept that
tall.
challenge.
Paddling, absolutely. They look like such fun.
The children have to go with me.
But on a serious note, I will say that I think that's a really cool amenity for the riverfront. I think a lot of people take advantage of it.
Yeah, thank you.
So now the vote. All in favor of approving first reading, please indicate so by showing your right hand. And first reading is approved unanimously. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Items for consideration. Ms. Harden, consideration of approval of a name for a new subdivision on Boundary Street. And I guess Kingston Creek is what is proposed.
Yes, ma'am. Kingston Creek is proposed, the subdivision off of Boundary Street. You discussed this back in 2001 as a rezoning to allow for the maximum amount of uses, or excuse me, the maximum amount of units to be built on the property. If you might remember, this is about 12 acres with most of it being wetlands, but there is a developable area along Boundary Street. And that rezoning was achieved. The applicant has turned in their development plans and recommended the name Kingston Creek for the property. It is a former Kingston property and it is off of the Crabtree Creek, so. We recommend approval.
Thank you so much. I move we approve that name. Is there a second? Ms. Helms, you get a lot of press today. Was that a second? Yes. Any discussion, questions, concerns? There being none. All in favor of this new development, official name being Kingston Creek, please indicate so with a showing of your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Mr. Emmerich for this administrator's report.
All my good news is at the beginning and now I've spoiled it.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. A couple of things. The new gateway sign in front of Conway High School is constructed. The paint will go up soon. We're working on some of the stenciling. It will incorporate the city's font, but incorporate also part of Conway High School's logo. So it's going to be kind of a combination.
In 1732.
And 1732. That's right. We are down a number of mowers right now, which is probably the worst possible time to be down the number of mowers we are. They're all in various states of repairs, and we are waiting on parts, which has been an ordeal. So if you see grass getting high, bear with us. It's going to take us a little bit longer to get the mowing completed than usual, and some areas are going to be tough to mow without the equipment we have. So the parts are on order. We're just waiting for them to come in, and then we can get the machines fixed. On a good note, Walmart has donated several pallets of mulch and pallets of flower bulbs to the city. So thank Walmart for the generous investment in making our city look good. On the kind of flip side, last night, for the third time in 2 weeks, we had people stealing our flowers from plants and beds throughout the city. It may sound trivial, but it takes hours to plant these pots and water them and cultivate them for months to get them to look as good as they do, which means it costs the taxpayers hundreds of dollars per pot. And we do take it very seriously when we catch the thieves, they'll be prosecuted fully. And for those listening, we have a lot of security cameras up in public places, and we will catch the people doing it. So just let that be known. Similarly, it's an election season starting very soon. Our election season for signs starts this Thursday. The county started Sunday, which has resulted in a lot of signs going up too soon in the city. And in places where they cannot legally go. So many of you woke up on Sunday morning to hundreds of signs placed in the right of way, on city property, on private property without permission. And it's number one, it's a zoning violation. Number two, it's litter if it's in the public right of way. Our zoning ordinance, each violation is punishable by an $1,100 fine. So if you're a candidate that has put up 100 signs in public right of way, that could be multiplied by $1,100 per sign. In a 3-hour period this morning, our staff removed 150 signs that were illegally placed in the city. And again, each violation could be punished by an $1,100 per fine. We do keep those signs and we will give them back. This year, we may give you something with it when you get your signs back.
Thank you. There are about 20 more on Mill Pond Road.
I think we
came up
got them
since.
all.
You think so?
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Depends on what time you stop this morning.
If not, please let us know and we'll go out again. Brandon Harrelson, our Public Works Director, met with SCDOT today about continuing sidewalks across Crabtree Canal on Main Street, connecting the Speedway sidewalk to where the Old Oak Tavern sidewalk used to be. If you've seen Main Street, North Main Street, SCDOT is doing repair and replacing of sidewalks and curbing in some of those areas, anticipation of a resurfacing project. So we're hoping we can piggyback on that existing work and be able to get that sidewalk done seamlessly. So know that that's in the works. There is a nighttime lane closure planned on the Main Street Bridge for May 17th from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. That is for an inspection of the Main Street Bridge. Some updates from our Keep Conway Beautiful committee. A crew from CCU picked up 8 bags of litter in Waccamaw River Park on April 23rd. The FFA group from Conway High School held a cleanup downtown on April 19th. On the 4th Thursday of each month, Keep Conway Beautiful will hold local cleanups throughout the city, working with volunteers from Santee Cooper. You can check out your own cleanup litter kit from the Conway Library. Each kit contains safety gear, gloves, trash bags, and grabbers. So you can take it, do a litter cleanup, or bring it back as a exchange. Students from Conway High School working with Conway Downtown Alive held a cleanup event on April 30th. The Great American Cleanup will be on May 14th at 8 a.m. and we will meet and begin from the Billy Gardner Sports Complex. And there's also a litter cleanup event scheduled on May 26th at Collins Park at 10:30. So, I think for years we've had a litter problem and didn't know how to address it. I think you can tell that it's being taken very seriously. Coastal Carolina University's graduation ceremonies are later this week on the 6th and 7th of May. So if you see a lot of kids downtown getting their picture taken, congratulate them. Conway Downtown Alive's Groovin' on the Green starts this Friday on the town green and continues on the 13th and 20th. This Friday, Special Blend starts at 7:30. Chamber of Commerce's reverse raffles this Saturday at the Shrine Club starting at 6 p.m. I only have 2 more things, I swear. The RFQ for public art is due this Thursday, May 5th, and we're hopeful that we'll have many talented and creative artists interested in partnering with the city to improve our public art offerings. This RFQ, again, is a qualification statement. It is not a proposal. So we're not getting art out of this proposal, just getting to meet with artists who are interested in working with the city. And finally, the underground utility conversion project on 4th Avenue has completed all of the side street work except for Powell Street. The contractor is making great progress, hopes to complete all of the boring work midsummer. That is not boring as in snooze boring, but boring as going underground by midsummer. And the estimated full completion time of the project is spring of 2023. That allows for time for resurfacing, for settling, and for all the lines to be removed from above ground to underground. And that will take it from phase 1 start of Kingston Lake all the way to Highway 378 where it intersects with 4th Avenue. And that's my report.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Mr. Emmerich before he rests, before he snoozes?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Helms for council input.
I am glad that Kate is opening that, excuse me, Catherine, she's opening that paddleboard thing. I bought a paddleboard for them. So Larry, I'll hook you up. You can come paddleboard with me. I get you a life vest. Last week, Tuesday night, I believe, I went to the planning commission meeting and it was heated, but I thought Ms. Jordan did a good job. I think our board did well answering a bunch of questions. I left more confused than I was, but I'm glad I went and I appreciate the community support and I'm here to do what I can for that community. That's all I got.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Hyman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, just this past weekend here in Conway was, I don't think we could have asked for any better weather. I mean, you walk around town, it just seemed like every street we walked down, there was 40 people walking and it's great. And I did want to, Wanda Lily is not here, but we had a tree that was damaging some foundation stuff at my house and Wanda came out and helped with that. And I do want to thank her for that. Also Brandon Harrelson, Stormwater. Brandon, I saw the subcontractor back off of Pine Street today. Looks like they're gonna probably start that it's cleaning out some ditches. So that should help with stormwater. But again, thank you everybody for the hard work and that's all I've got.
Thank you so much. Mr. White.
Oh, thank you. Smith Jones Pool, I want to thank you, sir. Mr. Crampton, is it? Crampton. Thank you very much for bringing that up. And also to our staff for getting it done because that was going to be on my agenda from until it gets done. So I thank you for that as well. The tennis courts was, I think it was approved that we do some revitalization to the tennis courts as well. We'd like to see that going on as well. I was also asked about the political signage, but you already touched on that, so I'll leave that go. My question was with the healthcare partners in Dollar General, and I know that's why some folks came in today, was in why was there withdrawal? Do I need to ask that question or can it be answered?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. That's the end of that. I was on Granger Road and one of the neighbors stopped me in the corner of Granger and Leonard Avenue. If you're on Leonard Avenue running into Granger Road, trying to make a right turn, that road is real narrow. And in order to make that right turn, you would have to go over into the oncoming traffic more or less if you're pulling a trailer or just going out that way with a large vehicle. So in other words, we need to look at that corner and see what we can do to make it a little more passable, drivable. And with the committee that the Keep Conway Beautiful committee, I was just thinking about another committee, and I know we're going to commit it to death, but most of the activities in Conway is done downtown, more or less. And I was thinking that it would be good if we could create a committee to have activities throughout the city of Conway, like at the parks, jazz in the park, or art in the park. Now that we're dealing with the artists, and also just something else other than just downtown, because there are other areas of town that could be useful and also helpful to bring activities into the community. And the gateway sign on 378, I think we purchased that piece of property adjacent to the rate center. Is that not where that sign gonna go on?
Yes, but it's behind a couple other projects at this point.
Okay, we would love to get that grass cut in that little shot, please, also. Thank you very much. And that's, I think, all, Miss. And thank you, Miss Susan, Catherine, excuse me. I was just thanking you for coming to Conway, and I'll come and get a private lesson maybe.
She knows your liability.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Goldfeld.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. I've got a picture, and I know that you can't see it back here, but when we're done, I'll leave it here and you can take a picture of it or just look at it. But the last few weeks, we've sort of been going back and forth on a very emotional topic about some redevelopment, whether to do it or not do it. And it's my understanding, Larry, excuse me, Mr. White, that the applicants just withdrew their request. But something that I wanted to address was this. This is a picture, an aerial shot of downtown Conway in the 1960s. And when you look at it, you'll see, even right here on Main Street, it's beautiful now. You'll see a lot of rundown properties. You'll see a lot of even rubble in the picture. And at some point, our predecessors, people that sat in these seats, had a longer term vision for this Conway and drafted ordinances that required and dictated that you have design guidelines in place, that you do things a certain way. And I think that, their vision is that it's not going to be fixed today or tomorrow, but a generation from now or 2 generations from now, it'll make Conway better. And I think we can certainly look at this picture and then look at most of downtown Conway today and realize that that was true. And, and so while I don't think we all agreed on the proper path forward in the instance that I'm citing, I think we can all agree that, working with people is what we need to do. And I think their decision to do that gives us the time to do that. So feel free to come and look at this picture. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, we didn't break it, but
There's not a single piece of tree.
yeah, there's one tree. There's 2 trees in the entire picture. And this goes all the way back up from almost the river to 5th Avenue, from Main Street over to, where was the old, the car lot, yeah.
378.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty expansive view, but just sometimes you have to take things slow and do them right to get them right. And I'm glad we're on that trajectory. And that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfeld. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I had the privilege of being out at the Recreation Center Saturday before last for their 2nd jamboree. First off, I thank Ms. Helms for showing up after me, so she had to speak. But to Ashley and David and his crowd, what, 600 kids this time? Yeah, another great turnout. Done an incredible job out there with the kids and athletics. And man, I failed miserably on the soccer kick, Mr. Hammond, so don't feel bad. But literally, it was my first kick of a soccer ball, I think, in my life. Yeah, it's great turnout. Kids were all hurdled out on the field with parents and everything else, because it was what, the 6-7-year-old and under? 3, I got that. There were a lot of very small kids running around there, having a large time. But everything was great. And to staff with Smith Jones, I know it's been a long journey. Thankfully, even with Mr. White getting involved with DHEC, we finally have that approved, and looking forward to moving forward with that. And for CCU athletics for the football team, I think we had a few drafted over the weekend or end of the week. So congratulations to them. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Butler.
Thank you. I want to start off with some great news from Conway High School athletics. Our baseball and our softball team made it into the playoffs. And our softball team has done so well this season. They actually get to host the first playoff game, which is on Wednesday. So that means they will be playing at home on Wednesday. So if you guys are free, of course, we want to support our high school students, and that is our girls softball team at Conway High School. I also want to thank the young man for his public input today. And I think that's one of the things that we have to be mindful of, is being mindful of all of the citizens of Conway, and making sure that we treat everyone fairly. We want all of Conway to be beautiful, not just one area. So I thank you for your commitment to coming and to speaking. And I just know that I appreciated it. And just making sure that the decisions that we make are in the best interest of all of our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I attended a conference this weekend, Conference of South Carolina Mayors, not so well attended when you consider there are 252 towns and cities in South Carolina. There may have been 50 people there, but just enough to really get a good opportunity to compare us with other people. One woman, we had to do an introduction of our town, and she said they are 362 people strong, unless Mrs. Jones has had her baby, in which case they were 263 people strong. So when I feel a little bit guilty about calling Conway a city, that made me more justified in doing just that. It was just one of those opportunities to compare challenges and triumphs and all. And I'm really glad I'm where I am. And that's because of all of you, certainly. I hope that the council and the administration will work with me on something that I think is going to help us in great ways. We aspire to be a college town. We want to not only have a greater college presence here in the city, but we'd like for some of those young, educated people to stay here to work. And we have sort of thrown around the word internship from time to time, but we haven't really gone very far with it. What I'm hearing in other places just gives me such hope that that we have a rare opportunity. We have a world-class university here in our city limits that is developing people along a number of disciplines, and it's our chance to build them to be leaders in our community and to help the city. Another thing that I learned, and I'm not going to tell you everything that happened this weekend, but the city of Camden shares our founding date, which is 1732, something I mention often. We are 10 years away from having our 300th anniversary. I know that staff has already started to consider that and begin some preliminary plans, but who knows? Those are us who are still alive 10 years from now. Just brace yourself for a great big celebration. We're certainly looking forward to it. And that's all I have at this time. If all hearts and minds are clear. Mr. Hammond, sure. Thank you, sir. So there's a workshop planned for, let me just announce that. Thank you so much. A discussion to amend Article 6, Design Standards, Article 7, Streets and Circulation, Article 9, Landscaping and Buffer Requirements, and Article 10, Subdivision and Land Development regarding development and design standards for single family and multifamily developments. Is this going to happen in the City Hall conference room? So anyone who is interested in being a part of that workshop, this is an opportunity for us to learn and grow together and start developing the information that will help us to make the right decisions. And I might recommend that for those kinds of future workshops, if we anticipate broad interest, that we might plan them for the new room that I've come to like so much. Do we need to adjourn here? Please feel free to join us downstairs if you will, please. Thank you. And for those who don't plan to, have a good night.
this started in June 2019, roughly. Residential design standards were discussed at city council, and this was also when they were doing the ongoing discussion of creating a new default zoning district to R, to address the concerns with quality of small lot subdivisions. There was a visual preference survey that was done following that council meeting. Input was solicited from city council, city staff, and the public. And then in September 2019, survey results were presented to council. In October 2019, a text amendment was created with a new default zoning district, which was considered due to the concerns of the small lot subdivisions, and planning commission recommended approval at their September 2019 meeting. And council originally discussed that in April 2019. November 2019, text amendments were discussed at Planning Commission. Planning Commission then recommended that a committee be formed to review the proposed amendments. The committee consisted of Planning Commission members, the development community, and real estate professionals. The residential design standards was formed, or the committee was formed, and met 4 times, twice in December 2019 and twice in January 2020. Following that committee, staff formed a separate text amendment that removed some of the items from the residential design standards amendment and added to another amendment that was ultimately passed by city council in September 2020. This amendment removed some of the items from the residential design standards amendment and added to what we call miscellaneous development standards amendment. That some of the items included the HOA requirement that you require an HOA to be formed, centralized mail kiosk requirements, and some of the street tree language in the residential design standards amendment. March 2020, Planning Commission reviewed the proposed amendments, post committee, and requested a few amendments at that time, then deferred back to staff to make the requested changes. June 2020, the text amendment went back to Planning Commission with the recommended changes, which was unanimously approved. July 2020, the amendments were discussed with City Council. There were some minor changes requested at that time regarding distinguishing between the types of vinyl and enforcement of facade materials. Some of them would be how would staff tell if high quality vinyl was being installed, block diversity in housing sizes, because the ordinance does not have a minimum and maximum housing size. September 2020, a public hearing and first reading was held on the proposed amendments. Some of the concerns at that time included the ordinance being reasonable for smaller subdivisions or single lot developments, infill parcels and demolished structures. And staff then suggested at that time that there could be an applicability section created to the text amendment that stated the requirements were only applicable to major subdivisions. And thank you. And these were some of the proposed amendments at that time, to have garages, carports, 3 foot behind the build-to line, R1 to R4, single family developments, no vinyl siding to be permitted unless it was just trim elements.
It's going to come back up in a second.
Right. Additions to existing structures with non-conforming exterior surface may be allowed to continue. The non-conformity with the approval of the planning director. Other considerations would be that a sidewalk would be installed connecting the front door to the front sidewalk or driveway. All construction shall be on an elevated slab or crawl space of a minimum of 18 inches above grade elevation. A minimum overhang or eave of 12 inches would be required on all single family construction. And then block diversity, which would require a variety of housing styles, and that you couldn't have the same house design next to each other or within 5 houses of each other on the same side of the street. A block diversity plan would be required at the time that the development was submitted, and then non-conformities would not be eligible for zoning appeals post-construction. Other general design standards. There we go. All right, so the yellow text is currently in code, and what's in white is what was proposed. And as I stated, vinyl siding was proposed to be prohibited unless it was trim elements. You can have fiber, cement, brick, or equivalent quality material. The primary material in the front elevation would also be used on the side and rear elevations. And there has to be a combination of no less than 2 of those on the facade of the building. And all stormwater detention shall be equipped with a fountain that is operable at all times, and failure to maintain them would be a zoning violation.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Not to slow you down at all. Number 1 says vinyl siding is prohibited, but there may be these exemptions for trim elements by the planning director. What was the thinking, just in terms of putting that in the purview of a single employee? Seems like it's it could be a massive kind of issue. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Harden.
Most of the zoning ordinance says that things can be exempted by, if there is an exemption, that there's an option for the planning director or the zoning administrator to make a different call based on some criteria. And at that point, when the zoning director or the planning director says no, then it goes to BZA. So it seems like it's just up to one person, but actually it's a zoning enforcement action, much like the zoning administrator enforces all of the zoning.
And it wasn't mistrust of that one person, it was more about the labor involved for one person. And so, let me ask you what that means. It said except trim elements.
Right.
Is that just to make sure that you or your designee has decided that that is trim versus a major part of the structure
I'll give
itself?
you an example. The 12-inch E that is required off of the roof. Underneath that could be a vinyl siding piece to trim under there, rather than having to have a hardy board or a brick or something else. It's easier on the construction for the gutter.
Yes.
It's easy to install. It's easy to repair in case of leaks off of the roof. And it would be something that would not be directly visible from the road. But if you were under it, it would be visible. So that way, that trim is something that a staff member could say, okay, for that little bit, we could approve that.
Okay.
If it was something that disrupted the pattern of the facade, I would be less likely to approve it. I would be less likely to encourage my staff to approve it, be more likely to encourage them to do something different or go to BCA for a variance.
Okay.
Sometimes there's a higher quality material. If they're trying to do it as a lesser quality material,
Right.
we'd be less inclined to approve it.
Sure.
If it's a high quality material, then we'd be more inclined to approve it.
Absolutely.
So that, I think that's why there's
Because
flexibility.
we think those decisions are probably based on cost anyway. Homeowners who wouldn't want the great
Right.
quality if they could afford it. Okay, thank you.
And then density was one of the items. Right now for multifamily and R2, you have to have 6,000 square feet plus 2,500 square feet for each additional unit. And then for R3, it's 5,000 square feet for the first unit and 2,500 square feet for each additional unit on top of the open space. That has created a lot of confusion in the development community. In this way, when you consider the density of the development by how many units, how much open space would be required because of the number of units, along with the landscape buffer requirements and the parking, that would be, staff felt that would be a way that you could better control and better determine the size of lots that would be needed based on the number of units that was going to be developed.
Question, who determines whether or not there's on-street parking or parking in front of the house, in the driveway?
This codes do. So we require off-street parking. And these also that we're looking at are just for townhouses and multifamily. So these are just for multifamily sections. So for instance, the density lot units that are being dropped for the multifamily.
So that also would mean that the road would have to be wide enough to.
If they can meet the road requirements, the off-street parking, the height requirements, the landscaping requirements, and the setback requirements and the stormwater requirements, then they can get as many units as all that will let them.
And then within the height limitations also, so you'd still have a height limit that would limit that.
So I was planning director for 2 years, 2.5 years.
Was it 20? Oh my God.
2.5 years, and I have no idea. I'm glad we didn't have many townhomes come in because I have no idea what the requirements are. That 6,500 for the first, and then 5,000 for the second and third. MC, were you the same way?
Yeah,
I have no idea what that means.
yeah. I think it's a multifamily, but not normal.
It's super confusing.
I do,
Yeah.
but it's boring, so we can go back.
But if we don't understand it, it was our job. Imagine someone trying to build something, it's impossible. So there's a better way to do it.
There is.
Yeah.
All right, and these were other proposals. The open space standards would be applied to subdivisions and planned developments. Would be done the same way for multifamily, which is what we just discussed. Parking would be in the rear, sidewalks along the street, and chimney requirements and landscaping for the parking, which would include additional canopy trees based on the number of parking spaces that were going to be provided.
Chimney requirements, do we need to do anything about that?
They go down to the ground rather than
I
come out of
see.
the middle of the wall.
I
and
see.
just project up.
Thank you.
So no chimney, no requirement.
All right, roundabouts was another one.
Missed one, I think.
No, that was only.
Okay, you do it backwards.
If they were gonna have more than 150 lots, roundabouts would be constructed at appropriate intersections to improve vehicular and pedestrian safety, and median landscaping would be the responsibility of the HOA to maintain. Was another consideration to slow down vehicles within developments.
And I don't mean to slow down this process. I know you've got a lot to go through, but isn't the word appropriate difficult to, I mean, who decides what's appropriate? Do people agree on what's appropriate? You know what I mean? We're saying that a roundabout, pardon me, a roundabout is required in an appropriate place.
And that would probably be more at the discretion of the public safety. They would look at the plans along with the fire department to determine what areas within the subdivision, as they do now, they determine which areas would need a stop sign. And then they would also determine which areas would be better suited with a roundabout.
We're getting kickback from that? Or is it about the same cost?
People don't stop at stop signs now, which is a problem. So three-way.
I'm all for.
Yeah.
Roundabout.
I think at three-way and four-way stops is primarily where we see the problem. So this would eliminate that issue by slowing traffic down within the subdivision without there being the need for us to enforce it.
Right, and the question is whether or not the developers have any heartache over this requirement.
Yes.
They do, I would.
They lose space and it costs more.
It costs more.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, they're gonna have a problem with it. We need a roundabout on Fifth Avenue.
One of them was.
Right after you paddleboard.
That's Smith Jones and he can't swim. Save me.
Sorry, Jessica.
We're
just tired.
That's why I'm trying to be as quick as possible. Pathways will be constructed, connecting all the open space within the community. The TRC would have the discretion to allow modifications as they do now. Another thing is that planning commission can also approve modifications to the plan if the applicant decided to go forward that way. And all open space shall be connected to the sidewalk network. We already require that all open space to have some type of dedicated access. So within subdivisions, instead of the open space being behind the lots, and there just being an easement to access the open space, we've been requiring that they have dedicated area that's platted on the final plat with some type of improvement to access those open space areas. Street trees, sidewalks will be constructed adjacent to the street right of way with a minimum separation between the sidewalk and the roadway of 5 feet. Street trees will be planted within 5 feet of the foot planting bed. And they would be owned, maintained by the street owner, or I'm sorry, by the HOA or the owner. We've already, this was actually one of the ones, some of it we took and we put in the other amendment that we did at the same time for miscellaneous development standards. The only thing that didn't change was the width of the street. The idea was that you would increase the planting bed between the sidewalk and the roadway of 5 feet. Right now it's 3 to 4 feet. And you would reduce the roadway width from 24 to 22 feet. That way the streets or the trees had more room on the house side of the sidewalk. And that way they weren't being placed between the sidewalk and the roadway, because that, according to Wanda and Kevin, it was damaging the sidewalks. The tree roots didn't have a lot of places to go, and it was creating a maintenance nightmare. So that was the idea, was that you increase that planting bed, or you decrease it, decrease the pavement width, and have it planted on the house side of the sidewalk. And this just reflects the amendment that would have had, would to be increase that to 5 feet and also reduce the pavement width from 24 to 22 feet. And then that way you keep the 50-foot right-of-way width. Estimate of average daily trips may require a full traffic study if it determines that it may have an impact on the road network or functionality. This could, be applicable to some subdivisions in some areas, and may not be applicable to other subdivisions. If it's along 501 and your entrance is going to be on 501, well, then that's something you probably would want a traffic study for, versus on a sub-collector road and it's not as large of a subdivision as other ones.
Stop for just a second, but
Yeah.
if you think about the number of complaints we get about speeding and everywhere, it's because we require a road that is wider than what is required for the speed that we allow. So a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit can be done on a much more narrow road. The narrower the road, the less the speed is. The wider the road, the higher the speed. So we require 24 foot.
24 foot of asphalt.
So 12 feet per lane is overbuilding a lane. If we only required 10, people couldn't go as fast, but we require 12. So if by shrinking the width of the road, we can, number one, save developers money because we're requiring less asphalt, slow people down just by design, and then allow for a wider landscaping bed between the sidewalk and the road, which was safer for pedestrians.
Question, what happens when the kids come home or the kids come for Christmas?
They can't park on the street anymore.
Okay,
Because then the trash trucks and fire trucks can't get there.
well,
We have-
that's
we
why-
have to
that's-
prohibit parking on the
That's
street.
where I'm going. Is that, you ride into some of these neighborhoods, that we've built in the last decade.
Both sides.
And they're on both,
Right,
is
right
that-
now, we allow parking on the street. HOAs can restrict it.
well, y'all have heard me whine about, I almost did it tonight, about, at Food Line, people parking in the fire lane. We don't enforce that.
We have been since the last meeting, but
Really?
yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna ask right now. Yes, we have.
park anymore, thanks, Wade.
I'm not asking, man. You're asking. I'm not asking.
Swear.
That's the only way we can shop it.
I just wonder if it's reasonable to expect that it's enforced. Because it's gonna happen. The kids come home, the kids come for Christmas or
Extra cars.
whatever, and
Extra
I mean,
visitors. Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
In discussions and previous employment, one of the things we talk about often is, do you plan your community for the day after Thanksgiving? Or do you plan your community for the other 364 days? If
Fair
you
point.
plan your community for the day after Thanksgiving, you get parking everywhere.
Mhm.
So the quality of life is balanced between the road width and the ability to park. So I agree with you 100%, because if my son were to drive, God bless him, I'd stick him out the street too. But it's something where we have to look at a lot of opportunities here for the quality of life overall. The street width can be wider, but we have to have at least a 5-foot path for pedestrian safety between the road and the sidewalk, and the trees help provide for that. The tree's going to kill us if it's less than 5 feet. And then if you want to expand the width required for the streets in order to provide on-street parking, we can do that, but we're going to take away lots. So it's something we need to decide at. There's arguments on both sides. Absolutely hear you as a parent of a kid that could drive with that third or fourth car out there, absolutely. But I also know that.
I think I'm inclined to be with you on this. I brought that up because inevitably it's gonna be an issue.
Yeah.
That's gonna have to be addressed.
Oh, absolutely.
But as long as,
It got to the point in Myrtle Beach where the planning commission started requiring parking lots in subdivisions for overflow, because they were worried about the Christmas parties. And the developers were like, what am I supposed to do with 5 lots on a paved area that I don't need? That's another lot that I could be building on.
well, and some of your upscale neighborhoods have the
Yeah.
same things for campers and boats and things like that.
And we have neighborhoods where they don't drive. or where they just walk and they don't need all that space. But the planning commission looked at it from Christmas parties. And so it became an issue for a while with us. It is something that definitely needs to be discussed a little bit more before we put in. But that's just points of view on both sides.
As far as street tree requirements, everything in yellow is already existing. The only difference with this one is item D on that, where it says street trees shall be planted in the 5-foot landscaping strip. That was not adopted because that continued to be a part of the residential design standards. Item F actually was adopted in the miscellaneous development standards ordinance, just because that has been an ongoing issue for staff. Who actually maintains it after a year? We know the developer maintains it for a year, but then who gets the violation notice after a year? Is it the property owner or is it the HOA? Because it's in the right of way, we wanted to have some clarification on that. Parks and open space, it just basically removes may and puts shall be designated for ownership and maintenance by property owners association. And the new section G, all major subdivisions and other developments with common areas shall form a homeowner or property owners association. That actually was also added in the miscellaneous development standards ordinance, which was passed by council. And then the other one is about street name signs that the developer or HOA shall reimburse the city for expense of replacement of street name signs if they were to be damaged. Public water and sewer, this is highlighted because this was part of residential design standards, but it's probably something that could have actually been incorporated into miscellaneous development standards, the other one, because this is something that is done from public utilities.
This one is a result of a subdivision putting in the water and sewer utilities and stopping them short of the public right of way, so that the next person who wanted to develop had to pay them basically a ransom to be able to connect into the system or reroute around them. And so when they're putting it in and they're giving it to us as part of that, they got to take it to the public right away. Makes sense.
These three items right here, parking on local residential streets. Parking would be prohibited if the total pavement width was less than 24 inches. And this goes back to, 24 feet. And this goes back to reducing the 24-foot requirement now to 22 feet. If it exceeds 35 miles per hour. The license plate readers and cams, that was not a popular discussion. There was a lot of pushback on that. It is something that the public safety, officers would definitely like to have installed, because not just once people live there, but before people live there, it's a way for, while they're developing houses within the subdivision, it would help the police department out tremendously to be able to know and to have those and know who's going in there and, find out who might be stealing construction materials. And then vehicle storage, that would eliminate lot space for developers to be able to have lots.
And if it's incorporated as vehicle storage into an HOA uses, that will get exponentially more expensive as it goes by, and increase the HOA fees, which then makes the neighborhood harder to afford for the people that bought in the beginning. Just as a something to think about.
As for mailboxes, we had centralized mail delivery systems that was incorporated into the miscellaneous development standards to coincide with the United States Postal Service requirements now. Oh, I had some more.
Sorry.
So that's basically the only difference that I would say. There were some changes made, and I thought that I added those slides, but I may have done it after. I was doing it pretty late, so it may have just been after that.
Can you go back to the residential beginning? Go through that real quick again.
All right. Do you have the PowerPoint, just the regular council PowerPoint? Yeah, that's where I put it actually. Sorry. Thank you, Judy.
And what Jessica just went through was the original
That's right.
guidelines. So this that was in your packet, starting from this page, that's what she went through, was the original discussion points. What she put into the PowerPoint later on was the subsequent discussions after the committee got involved and made recommendations.
I think some of our heartburn last time was that most of the stuff by the committee was done by developers. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, there doesn't need to be a committee.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the problem, is everything that we had talked about, you know, whether it be vinyl siding or design standards. No, we can't do that.
Right. No, and the problem there was we invited,
Yeah.
you know, architects, engineers, design professionals. Unfortunately, they didn't show up. The developers were the only ones that did because they were concerned about it. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and I think we may have had one person, maybe from real estate.
Yeah, and even those were
Yeah.
concerned about it.
So these basically are just how it ended up.
Oh,
Yep. The proposed language that newly constructed garages or carports shall have a mix of orientations. So they could include attached carports or garages be 3 feet behind the primary residential structure, side load garages, or garages flush with the residential structure.
And no snout houses.
right.
That's right.
A word I gained from,
Do tell.
administrator.
And the issue that I saw most from the development community was that having the garage for the house provided that added privacy that they would have in their yard.
The negative with the snout house is a lot of people move here with a ton of stuff. They store everything in the garage, they leave the garage door up, and everybody has to look at all their garbage.
Well, in addition, part of the parking that you count for the application
There's a garage.
are the units in the garage, and they're automatically taken away by the use of that as a man cave or a storage unit or a pop-up business.
Yeah, does
And-
anybody put
yeah.
their car in the garage?
Yeah.
I wanna know who it is. I mean.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
If I get my husband's stuff out there, I would.
Yeah. My carport has cars. Yeah, they're everything. That's all. Yeah.
But I said, my
Car
garage
has
was
a
built in
place.
34. I don't know if a car will fit in it.
I bet a golf cart might fit.
Yeah.
Rather than, we did have R4 on here, but that's a neo-traditional zoning. It already has our design standards in that zoning district, so it wasn't necessary to add additional design standards on top of what they already have. But we ended up, the final product was to leave vinyl siding as an allowed facade material. But when vinyl siding was going to be used, you had to use a combination of not less than 2 types of the material as provided above on the front facade. So that was how it ended up. This one, pretty much the same way the committee had it, that it would be installed, a sidewalk would be installed connecting the front door to the front street front sidewalk or driveway.
Can you back up real quick?
Yep.
Those little bitty hang dogs from the driveway to the front door, that's all you get when you let them go just to the driveway. You don't get connection to the sidewalk because of what they talk about with privacy. Part of the reason we have regulations that allow houses to be closer to the street and we want garages back further is because we do want people to be able to see what's going on the street. The eyes on the street provides more safety in a neighborhood. People say, well, I don't want to see what I'm doing in my house. Well, put up curtains. You know, you're absolutely, everybody will put up curtains. The backyard are bigger and can be fenced in and do whatever you have to do in there within the law. That I have to say that. And the front yards are for, you know, setting the tone for the home. And most of those developments we talk about where you have guidelines.
There at one point, this was early on, I think I had suggested that we require a front porch of a certain size on every house. And that was because there used to be a time when the front porch was where people spent their time. And that is when people knew their neighbors, they could see them walking down the street, they had conversations with them. And at some point in time, the design switched from the front porch to the backyard for the privacy and all that. And when that happened, the sense of community has been lost. The neighborhoods that have the strongest sense of community have the strongest front yard presence. So that was one of the suggestions we made early on, was the front porch. And I think it was nixed pretty quickly by the development community because they don't want to build a front porch and a put a concrete pad in the back for something in the future.
Can I ask a question or am I allowed to ask a question?
If she has a question, sure, yeah.
Okay, I guess one of my questions would be with the situation in terms of fires that occur in a lot of the two-family dwellings as well as some of the townhouses. And when I look back at last year and even this year where we've had some fires, is there any consideration in terms of what other safety issues that we need to take a look at and address
Well, I
with
do
new
know that,
development that is coming on?
And Allison might be able to go into more detail, but the
Right.
party wall situation for duplexes and things like that,
Mhm.
they're typically that use fire rated drywall. And then if you are closer than so many feet to the property line, I believe it's 5-foot threshold, then it would require that side of the wall also be fire rated.
And in some cases, depending upon how you design your townhome developments, you can get benefits for sprinkling it rather than for just leaving it up to firewall safety. One of the neighborhoods that I worked with in Myrtle Beach was the first in the state to be fully sprinkled. And that allowed them to get much closer together, which made the developer happy they could get more units.
Okay.
And am I right that even on residential, not multifamily or townhouse, that if it's within a certain distance from the property line, it also has to be fire retardant?
Fire retardant, and they can't have windows that look into each other.
Or they have to be fire rated windows.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a little extra cost.
Nobody really had an issue with this because most of the homes have overhangs anyway, that this would just require a minimum overhang or eave of 12 inches. My understanding from the development community is that most of them do that anyway. This was the block diversity. This was a little controversial as well. This would just require a variety of housing styles. I think that instead of doing it every 5 houses, that they just said that the houses next to you and across the street couldn't be the same. So instead of going 5 houses out, it was just next to you and across the street from you.
I think that's the extreme cookie cutter, if it's every other house.
Yes.
Good.
And I
Some of them only have 5 spots.
Right.
And they don't want to go out and do more.
Right.
I've seen houses being permitted on properties that don't have flat grade. And the builder just flat out built it straight wall down, right in a floodplain. 8 feet of brick in a floodplain because they didn't interpret the plan correctly on the site plan. And that was a very expensive house to go back and retrofit. So oftentimes they come in with just a simple pallets. If you want more variety, they're gonna push back.
Yes, and then, from an enforcement standpoint, one of the concerns was you can submit a block diversity plan. However, after the development is constructed, a lot of times neighbors will say, oh, well, I like what you have. I really like your siding. I think I'm going to change my siding. So then it turns into, well, how does staff know to go back, especially if you're talking 10, 15 years from now, what the neighbor did or what they're not allowed to do. So I could foresee that being an issue. But if this was to move forward and be required, then that would be something that would be required at the civil site plan submittal phase. Just like they have to submit architectural drawings for multifamily, they would also have to submit block diversity.
So what do we require now, just in terms of avoidance of a given house style? There's no distinction made at all.
No.
Somebody can build 50 of the exact same.
Not only can they, but they do.
Yeah.
And I don't think that honestly, unless it's something that's in a planned development, which is a separate ordinance, and they would say that, then that would be something that could technically be suggested, unless it's actually in the ordinance for all other zoning districts. Shingles, no issues really on that. 3-tab shingles would be prohibited. Buildings would be constructed of materials consistent with characteristics of the neighborhood: brick, stone, wood, vinyl siding, fiber cement, hardy plank shaped shingle, and the primary material on the front would also be used on the side and rear, and that there should be a combination of no less than 2 of the aforementioned materials on each facade of the building, and that would be for townhouses. This is just deleting the language that we currently have for multifamily, as I previously stated, and replacing with the density would be dependent upon the parking requirements, open space requirements, height limitations in the area of construction. And that's pretty much the same thing right there, requiring more 2 materials on each facade of the building. Same thing there, block diversity. Am I? I was about to say, that seemed like a lot, but the same stuff.
Keep going forward. See what you got.
And this right here for multifamily, for buildings with road frontage, the building shall be forward of any parking structures and made to face the street front, and sidewalks would connect all entrances to the street front sidewalk network. And for streets without sidewalks, sidewalks would be required along the entire frontage as a condition of development. And buildings will be constructed of materials consistent with the characteristics of the neighborhood. And this is just talking about the primary material on the front elevation would also be used on the side and rear with the accommodation of no less than 2 of the aforementioned materials. Talks about chimneys being located on the exterior elevation. Where shingles are proposed to be installed, they would have to be architectural shingles, and landscaping for surface parking facilities for multifamily will have 1 canopy tree for every 5 parking spaces, in addition to the required landscaping requirements that they already have. And this is just deleting a section. And this also talks about the layout of the circulation system and requiring additional stop signs, requiring a roundabout or other methods to help calm down traffic.
Very still.
There you go. This goes back to the pathways. It made it to the final cut. And this right here is the difference. In the previous one, it was reducing the pavement width to 22 feet and increasing the planting strip to 5 feet. And because we did not include the reduction of the pavement width to 22 foot, then we instead reduced the planting strip from 4 foot to 3 feet to allow 1 foot of room on the other side of the sidewalk for that tree to be planted, still within the right of way.
And I think personally, I think that needs to be reevaluated, because I was told constantly by the engineering folks at all the power companies, when we put power lines underground, that first foot off of the property line is theirs. And if we were to put a plant or a tree right in there in that first foot, we're interfering with the delivery of a power system, and we don't want to do that. In addition, if you put the tree on the neighborhoods or the house side of the sidewalk, it's theirs. You can't tell them otherwise, and they will take it down or do whatever they want to.
And as a matter of fact, I have one subdivision now where I've visited within the last week where they removed the street trees that were installed by the developer and planted palm trees instead, because it was on the house side of the sidewalk, not between the road and the sidewalk. And they've also planted a bunch of bushes right at the sidewalk and flower beds and everything else, and they thought it was their tree.
It just begins at the sidewalk.
Exactly.
Oh,
And
shoot,
it does
they said
not.
it lays asphalt. Asphalt. Get off my sidewalk. Yeah.
This
I've got
is-
experience out here in Conway, just so you know.
This is just requiring a full traffic study, but they may require a full traffic study of any development that it determines would have an impact on the road network functionality. That made it. Sidewalks would be required on each side of the street stubs. So where street stubs are required in developments, they would have to go ahead and install those sidewalks versus just leaving them.
What is the
because-
street stuff?
So whenever we require in most cases interconnectivity. So if you have a subdivision that is going to connect to a piece of property that's yet undeveloped, then we would prefer that they put a street stub in. So that way, when the other development comes through for development, that they have a way to connect. So that you're providing that interconnectivity. Yeah.
There's a neighborhood, Ivy Glen, that you're right near you, that a lot was set aside for interparcel connectivity, but the street stub was not put in. They've tried to build a house on that lot for the last, I don't know, dozen years.
Oh, yeah.
They've even sold the lot a few times. It is designated for access and cannot be used for anything but access. And when the adjoining property does eventually develop, there's going to be confusion on who has to build that access road into the other thing.
Right.
So it will create future problems that we've not yet uncovered. This solves that. And it's been used in Rivertown Row, in Tiger Grand, in Carson's Ferry. Because the stubs were there, we were able to interconnect all those subdivisions.
This is just incorporating that the streets will be planted within 3 feet of the house side of the sidewalk and not between the sidewalk and the roadway unless otherwise approved by the planning director or their designee. And I will say that actually developers are installing them on the house side of the sidewalk just because we've been asking them to do that. And in some cases, it's worked out better for them to do that. But it is actually not a requirement right now.
And when it's a requirement, we'll have to do some real public education relative to ownership of those trees and restrictions on taking them down.
Yes, yes, right now it's a zoning violation, yeah. And this just goes back to the new language for public water and sewer systems that I previously explained. That would require them to be extended across the property line of the development to the right of way for future development. And that's it. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. I know it's a lot.
So now that I hear it, in this setting, it is information that we've heard before, but I have to say aloud that 2019 was a long time ago.
Yes.
So a few things right have changed and occurred in the interim, but just to sort of summarize and do a quick decision in council just seemed like beyond what was reasonable to me. I hope other people find this helpful. Because as you've gone back through it, Jessica, I remember you saying all these things before. And but to have it presented again with some delay, I thought it was Greek and was really concerned about having to make any kind of decisions relative to all these things that seem to be so complex.
Oh, we're happy to do this with you anytime you want.
Thank you so much. And we've got, if I'm the only one of the long-termers who needed this refresher, in addition, we've got 2 brand new council members who I thought would benefit from this time.
It is the thought that, I mean, not to reinvent the wheel, but to use some of the things we talked about. And because a lot of the proposed stuff is stuff that came out of that last committee, which I don't think we were all real happy with. I mean, especially the residential design standards as far as elevation, as far as building materials, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I mean, it is kind of strange when you go by a small duplex and it's a brick duplex and looks good. And then you go in a neighborhood and all the houses look identical and are all the cheapest material possible. That my concern is, you know, we have better building materials now supposedly, but the houses that we're building right now are not going to last. At least I don't think. And I think if we make the developers build a better product, then we get in a situation where our community gets a better product.
And getting them up front is gonna help because they order products quickly and they will be quick to tell you, oh, I've already got that on order. I can't do it differently.
And this is going to require a bit of a balancing act because, you know, we have different thoughts on what affordable housing is, where it belongs, how it should look. But the things that make for an attractive, resilient community cost money. And developers aren't going to just sort of give a profit in order to make sure that they. One of my fears is there won't be any affordable housing. And I agree with Adam that if there was a way for there would be some interspersement of smaller homes and grander communities that they stay up longer, they are cared for better. I don't know the psychology behind it, but it's just the truth. And I'm not suggesting that we build another You know, I don't want to even name one of the communities that, I don't want to be offensive to anybody, but we all know that there are communities that when they put them up, there's one, I tell you what, I'll mention this one on 905. Just past the Dollar General on the right, when you're on 905, there's that little, oh my Lord, have mercy.
There's no
That
use
thing
of
has
those
not
either.
been there. I don't think it's been there 5 years, and it looks like, oh my gosh. And I don't know the answer to all that.
This is major subdivision. So,
Correct.
right, so, fine. So if I want to buy a piece of land, I can build anything I want to, basically. What this is doing is we're not punishing the homeowner. We're putting regulation on the home builders. Because for me, it comes down to who do you want moving here? We're not talking about taking care of the people that are here for the most part. We're talking about who are we importing to Conway? And as a friend of mine that works at the county said, you know, Conway deserves to be nice. O'Reilly County will let you build whatever you want to build. And that's what you're referring to. And there's so many more examples of just that. But, you know, why can't Conway be nice? Why can't, you know, we have a 24-inch, forget 18, a 24-inch base? You know,
In an area where you're looking at flooding, that makes a lot more sense.
if you want to go in and tear down a dilapidated house and build back a habitat house or for affordable housing or something along that line, you can do that. This doesn't stop that.
Right.
What this stops is importing. Yeah.
And the crawl space is actually one of the items that was ultimately removed from the final amendment. The crawl space item was, and then the prohibiting vinyl siding was also omitted from the final amendment. And then one of council's.
By our doing?
No, the final planning commission one that came to you guys. And then there was a few amendments discussed at the workshop that it came to after planning commission. And instead of omitting or prohibiting vinyl siding, because it would be hard to gauge the thickness of the vinyl siding or the quality of the vinyl siding, that if it's going to be used, that they have to use no less than 2 types of material on the front facade. So if they use vinyl siding, they also have to have like brick or stone or something like that. It's one of the changes. And if this is something that council did want to move forward, I would recommend adding an applicability section that stated that this would be applicable to major subdivisions only.
I think the bigger concern with the vinyl is, at least for me, is the grade. I mean, there's nothing worse than going into a neighborhood that's built on a 4-inch grade or a 4-inch slab, and all the vinyl around the house is torn up from somebody with a weed eater.
Shipping off.
Yeah.
One thing you may want to consider is instead of calling it a major subdivision, is calling it a requirement that you build a road. Because a lot of what we've got in here is based on building a new road and having a new road in there. If you were to do it based on a new road, then the subdivision off of Boundary Street would not have to be, it would not have to fulfill these items. Or smaller subdivisions that are already on public roadways would not have to go so far. And those are not popular with large scale developers anyway. Large scale developers that do cookie cutter houses, they want a bigger tract. They want to be able to control the road as they go in and the like. Also, let me see if I can say this correctly without hurting anybody's feelings. I love all of you. I live in a tract house neighborhood. I have for 22 years. I can't afford to live in Conway. I want to. I really want to. And I don't want to hinder somebody like another firefighter or another nurse or another EMT from being able to live here either. I do want to have best quality for them. I do think that you're on the right track for a lot of, especially the big national builders that don't care. They come in, they drop things, they don't care. They are the ones that are part of the problem in that they have very little warranty and the houses fall apart in one way or after the other after that. And those are the folks that unfortunately we have to regulate everybody for. But having a community or having a neighborhood road is a kicker into the public infrastructure that they have to build. And that infrastructure including trees and sidewalks and curb and gutter and the neighborhood open space and the like. So it might be an idea down the road to consider the difference being at a roadway, if you have to build a road. Now, some of these little 10-lot developments on the side of the road that have to build an access road, we get them in. But if they can access the roadway without an access road, then maybe that's something that would be an offset to this by saying, we understand that there's still affordability issues in Conway. Where there are roads that can support the existing development, let's let the existing development be there. But if you're creating a road and all this other infrastructure, you've got to consider how you're putting it out there, because Conway is worth so much more than what has been done in the past.
And at the end of the day, the fact remains is that what we've allowed to be constructed is not paying for itself.
And it won't.
And it won't.
No.
And so, you know, how do you address that? You get the and I understand what you're saying, and you're 100% right. But, you know, I don't know what the answer is other than we run a business here.
Yeah, everybody's got the same problems right now, so it's not just Conway.
We'll admit, well, it's not a problem. It's not a problem in like Charleston County or Hilton Head or Beaufort County, where a house, and I don't even know what houses go for here, Beth can tell me, but like, you know, one of these homes that goes for $200,000, the same exact house in those counties and those markets go for $350, right?
I think the
So,
median house just went up to $320.
okay, so you've got the same level of service that's expected in in Conway on that $200,000 house as you do that $350,000 house in Charleston County. And they're generating more revenue on that house to pay for all the things that we need.
And the demand is not gonna go away. We learned last week that Horry County in 30 years will surpass Charleston County for population. And we have to keep that in mind as we're going forward. And expanding our footprint and expanding our services to our population.
Yeah, Mayor Zeckenberg talked about, this is not countywide, but in the city of Conway, in the city of Charleston, that there's pretty much no space. No space for anything new unless something comes down. So
I talked with a developer about this very thing. He was adamant to me. He lives in Conway, though. He's not a nationwide builder. And he said, I don't want to build so much. He said, I have plenty of properties that I'm dealing with in the county. And I know he's doing some of those. And you know, it's kind of one of those that the county, as big as Horry County is, the money is not an issue with them, or at least I don't think it is, not as much as it is with us.
It's the same mindset of the Dollar Generals where they say, this is the footprint I will give you and this is it. Because my numbers work for this. And they all have people to answer to. They all sell shares, or they are holding land under shares, and they have people they have to report out to. So it's a problem, but it's something that we can definitely address. We just have to be able, once we put it down, we have to be able to stand on it.
We had a, when did the Collins Jolly thing come for us? That was what, a year ago, year and a half ago? And
Yeah, it was a couple years ago.
did it come originally as an idea for a PUD?
It did.
yes.
Because there was some multifamily, some
That's right.
different stuff in that.
Commercial too.
Yeah, there was some commercial aspects, some multifamily. You know, to what you said, I think that's how you do that. I mean, because that also had some areas that were gonna be same lot size as R1. And so you had basically what R1 is, or maybe, I don't remember if they had some.
Conservation.
Yeah, that they had talked about doing it back that way, but I mean, I think on a big subdivision like that, that's what you do.
And they actually are doing a conservation subdivision. They've got a conditionally approved master plan.
Does it have multifamily in that one too?
They do have one section that's considered like townhomes, yes.
Because conservation subdivision allows you to do
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
In larger cities where there is a very clear affordability problem, which we have, we're getting there. You can build into your zoning ordinance an inclusionary zoning ordinance that allows for density bonuses if you provide affordable housing. So normally you get 7,500 square foot lots. If you're willing to put 10% of your 10% of your homes are going to be affordable. Now that's a whole other issue how you manage that. then you get a density bonus to allow you 10 extra lots in your subdivision so that you don't lose the money on those affordable lots. And the goal then is you have to have the design standards so that no one knows which of those 10 are affordable. Because you don't want the developer to build a crappy little house that everyone knows, well, that's the affordable house.
Right.
They need to look just like all the other houses, the same quality materials and everything else, so that the people who live there, number one, don't have the stigma, number two, are able to use that as their stepping stone up.
Then you have an investor going about.
Or, that's right, and that's the management issue that you gotta have, yeah.
And I expected somehow magically, I suppose, that the designs, the materials and such would be the same, but you've gotta cut that cost somehow, maybe in just the size. But well, is there more opportunities for that?
I mean, I know of a house in Gallup Ferry that's probably 9,000 square feet, and it's a vinyl siding house. It's absolutely gorgeous. But again, it's the design of it. I mean,
You can buy a super high quality vinyl product.
Yeah, I mean, there really is. It's not just the product, it's the design. But one of the things that I don't think I've ever seen is a house that I'm like, man, that is beautiful. Goes on 4-inch slab and no grade. I mean, that just, and from a flooding standpoint around here, the difference in 18 to 24 inches would have saved a ton of houses. I mean, like my brother lives over next to the country club. It touched his, I mean, right underneath, it touched his insulation.
Right.
So he's up 18 inches. And if it would not have been up, it would have been sitting in his house.
Sure.
It makes a tremendous, it's a buffer.
So where do you want us to go from here?
Before you ask that, may I throw something in? Now go with me for a minute.
Where we go?
The city we have a lot of properties around town that's just sitting there. May I say that?
We don't have a lot.
We have some. Okay. Why can't we set an example of doing something with those lots and building some quote affordable houses? When we went to Greenville for the mass convention a couple of years back, they took us on a drive around the community and they did just that. The city of Greenville did. Took some houses that were, well, they were dilapidated, of course, but then they rebuilt some houses in the to make it affordable.
We have the 7 lots on Ann Street, which we're holding, I think, because we had someone that wanted to build something on those and we didn't sell to. We've got Whittemore. We've got the one on 378 behind Slim Jones. And we've got one on 370, 2 on 378 right now that would be hard to build on. I don't know that we have any other buildable lots. We've got all the flood houses, but those can't be built on.
What about old houses that, I mean, they're useful, like, regardless of where they are in town, they're useful, I mean, they need like a major overhaul, or they may not be big houses, but what about
Buying, demoing and selling the land or building
Well,
on
I
this?
don't know. Well, I think Greenville did triple P's on those.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that was, they had investors come in that, you know, whether it was Habitat or whoever.
MC, is Grand Strand Housing still doing that sort of thing?
They are, we funded it for years through CDBG.
Now they get home funds dedicated, which could do that currently.
What's the trans fund doing?
Public, private.
We did do that. I remember that now. With the CDBG, yeah, we would go in and we would fix up dilapidate, run-down houses and make them livable.
And we still do have that home money that they manage elsewhere. It's not our burden anymore.
We've
It's still being done.
We've spent probably $1 million
We
renovating
built a
housing.
house or two in Tinkertown. Tinkertown area.
Was on
Many years ago.
Highland Avenue also.
Temple,
And
yeah.
on Green Street.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
She don't want your phone number.
She's gonna pass it to the Paddleboard. Pass it on.
No shame, man.
Where do you want us to go from here?
So, I think that, my mind is clear on the direction we're going. And we may be ready to present it for a decision by council. I'm interested in what other people think.
I don't know what ideas y'all have. I mean, if y'all, I would, I would suggest, you seem like you've got some good ideas. I know y'all, if y'all got some stuff. Yeah. Well,
I'm not fired today.
I hate to workshop stuff to death, but if there are some changes y'all like to add, or.
It won't take long to put that together.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of good here.
Yeah.
It's not about tearing up what you've already done. You've already got a lot of good.
But I like the added ideas. I mean,
Would you like us to take some of the easier ones that looks like there's consensus on and start them coming through? So instead of having this package with 100 different things that there's some debate on some of
that's a
them,
great idea.
start bring them in a couple at a time and build the.
Knowing what we're doing, and the simpler things can go ahead and be instituted while we're grappling with some of the more complex issues.
And they could be footprint or footsteps that we lead you up to bigger things.
That's right. I like that idea.
Let's work on that, and while we're doing that, we'll bring ideas back as next future steps.
Cool.
24 inches is what I heard on instead of slab on grade, right?
I like 24. I like your narrower roads idea. I like the trees. What y'all said about that. I like the roundabouts in the bigger neighborhoods that are proposed where it makes sense.
We can be very specific on that. At 4-way and 3-way stops, it's a roundabout.
Okay.
I don't mind your idea about if there's an existing road. The only concern I have is there is a couple developers that I know of, one in particular, who that is something he loves to do. He buys a strip and sells the back out of it, and then keeps the front and does.
Yeah.
And
We had those in Myrtle Beach too, and what I eventually came to understand is that there's a place for that too. It's not everywhere, and it's not in 150 acres at X amount of density, but 5 or 10 at a time.
Well, and we could say that if he's doing more than 6, more
Yeah.
than something like that, or more than a certain number, you have to abide by the.
We have one 16-lot subdivision on Culture Road, and then we also have a 10-lot subdivision on Boundary Street.
It's one on Culture, that's on the other side of Oak, right at Oak, is that right?
No, that's actually right behind Conway
Grand.
National Bank and right there at the entrance to
Yeah,
Tiger
okay.
Grand. Yeah.
But I think both of those ended up having to put in
I
a
think so.
frontage road.
Yeah.
And that might have kicked off, if we make it based on Freedom Road, that will kick them over into it as well.
Was there a DOT access issue with those, one of those? Yeah.
They wouldn't approve the shared private drive, I mean, the shared driveways. Yeah.
I like the, if we're not gonna say no vinyl, then it's got to be whatever that higher grade vinyl is.
Is there a name
We can find a name for that.
Sure.
And one thing we suggested with the vinyl too is to have different, not all be shiplap, but maybe you have some,
Architectural.
yes, some more architectural.
Hardy plank.
Yeah, more, some of it be vertical, some of it be horizontal, shake it up, change it up a little bit, give it some variety, so that's another.
Shake it up, Mary Catherine. I like
Shake it up.
Shake it
Another
up.
thing, another thing I like too, and I've mentioned this, this has been some time ago, when we were talking about neighborhood going out on, oh my goodness gracious, for the new down Shortcut Road, between, El Bethel Road, yeah, between 378 and 501. And, the developer had proposed even some commercial out front. And it wasn't, I don't think staff liked that idea, but I made the point, why do we want everybody to have to get their butt on 501? I mean, like in some of these neighborhoods and things like that, where it makes sense, put the commercial out there so people don't even have to hardly get on the street. And you see, and I hate to compare other towns, but like you look at like Mount Pleasant, I know we're not Mount Pleasant, we don't want to be Mount Pleasant, but like they've done that a lot. You've got grocery stores in neighborhoods because it makes sense. Those people never have to get on 17. Just from a planning.
So what we may want to do next is look at our neighborhood commercial zoning district and try to make it so it fits better with the neighborhoods instead of being less highway, make it less highway commercial. Because right now, neighborhood commercial and highway commercial are pretty much the same thing. The uses are different, but they could look different.
Yes.
Yeah, we're holding
I don't
on to
disagree with
really
that at
good
all.
land near some really needy neighborhoods that need services near them. And when we talked a year ago, I've almost been here a year, oh my God. Almost a year ago about potentially adding in residential to neighborhood commercial, it became very obvious that those would be the next big subdivisions if we just save it as is. So we didn't bring that to you because it was a bad idea. It was my bad idea.
Here's my prediction, and you heard it here. That El Bethel area, just out in that general direction, is the next Carolina Forest when that Pearly Road opens. And so let's put commercial or neighborhood, whatever.
It's gotta be done right, though.
Yeah.
Well, of course.
If you go into areas and
All the way
grown
to the
up
street.
over years, Atlanta, commercial, and then the multifamily behind it, and then the single family behind that. That's kind of like the Euclidean zoning where you have the services, but you also have to go a little further to get a little more quiet. The things that can accept the noise are up against the noise, the things that don't want noise are as far away from noise as possible.
All right, let's get to work.
I think you're certainly satisfied with what I heard.
Thank you all very much. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Yeah, awesome. Is there a second? Maybe this is just Jordan. All in favor, so much. And this is unanimous. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.